Welcome to Tremendous Talk. We got the industry tea and the jokes. Actors, directors, musicians, and more. You're listening to Tremendous Talk.
Hi, everyone. I'm Law.
And I'm Ash, and this is a Tremendous Talk podcast.
Yes, and each week you can join us as we guide you through the realms of Hollywood and beyond when we speak to industry professionals in the spotlight.
So grab a boba tea and leave your shoes at the door. Welcome to Tremendous Talk.
Woo! Hey, Ash, picture
What?
this. We talked to the director of Picture This. What do you think? What do you think about that idea?
It sounds very exceptional, if I do say so myself.
What if we did that today on this podcast to the episode that these people are listening to right now?
Right now, the world needs you. Expect more.
Oh my God! Yes, those are some hidden gems in today's episode with Prarthana Mohan, the director of Picture This, which is a remake of another film called Five Blind Dates, written by some AAPI friends of ours as well. But it's so cute, and it's like a great concept of like having to go on multiple dates that don't necessarily go very well. I'll leave it at that.
I know, everybody knows me as a spooky little girl, but I will say my favorite genre of movies is the I love a good rom-com. And this checks off every box for me, and it just makes, I just want to sit with a little cozy cup of tea and watch this 12 times in a row.
Yeah, it's cool for me as like a South Asian person to see a South Asian character being the lead of the rom-com, which is, I couldn't tell you off the top of my head right now. I can't think of any others unless you count like Never Have I Ever as like a series rom-com. You know what I mean? But it's so like interesting to get to see the culture kind of injected into the fun concept of the original, just because it does feel authentically South Asian, and there's an Indian wedding, and there's a lot going on. But then also the sensibilities of like a lot of the supporting characters, you're like, oh yeah, that's like my auntie, or like that's like my uncle right there. So we're always, here for representation, but when it feels authentic, nothing better than that.
Oh, yeah. I just love talking with her, too. It was such a joy to talk. Joy! The whole episode is about joy.
Yes, joy!
Everything is about joy. The whole movie's about joy. Everything. I hope when you listen to this, so go watch the movie or listen to this first, and then go watch the movie streaming now on Amazon Prime.
Yes.
However, I can't wait for you to feel the joy of all of this.
Yes. It's going to be, the conversation was inspirational from a perspective of like filmmaking in general, of like learning how to go out and do it and trusting your gut and stuff. But then also just hearing kind of how community came together for some of the elements of the film to come together, like the Bollywood dance sequence. Like, spoiler alert, there's a Bollywood dance sequence, but like how that came together felt like a very organic evolution. And you'll hear about that, and about like how getting Phil Dunster of Ted Lasso fame came onto the project. There's a lot of things that you would think everything goes through channels of like a studio reached out to this or this agent reached out, but there is a lot of just interpersonal connections and networking that came together to make this film a reality, which I think is like a really cool kind of insight to how this movie was made.
Absolutely. Grab a snack, sit back, enjoy.
And welcome to the Tremendous Talk podcast, Prarthana Mohan. Yeah. Well, welcome to Tremendous Talk, Prarthana. My name is Law. This is Ash. And we're all about uplifting creatives, specifically BIPOC creatives, especially AAPI creatives. So thank you, first of all, for joining us on our little platform.
That's awesome. Thank you for having me. I'm very excited to be here.
Absolutely. Now, I don't know, Ash, I think we're on the same page. I love a good rom-com. I don't know what it is, but like whenever I think about, if someone asks me what's like your dream role, there's sci-fi, yes, but there's also rom-com lead. And something really cool about Picture This is that there is actually a Desi, Indian or like South Asian lead as like one of the people in this film. Was there ever kind of pushback to creating this, like putting that cultural spin onto this rom-com when you were developing the script or developing the script to screen?
That's a great question. I think in this particular project, because of the way it is structured in the story, because it is telling the story of a South Asian family
Mhm.
as they go through, and particularly our lead Pia, as she goes through sort of the trials and tribulations of dating in and around sort of her sister's wedding. So that's kind of the context of it for those who haven't seen it. It was kind of designed to really sort of celebrate the culture. So in some ways, it was really exciting to be able to do a project where you could really dig in and try to make things, as authentic as possible, still accessible, but there was, like I always would tell with our creative team, there's going to be a lot of things here that's very open and it can be accessed by like anybody who watches it. And then there's going to be a lot of things that really are for people who know the culture, and know what these relationships are like. So there's a little bit for us and there's a little bit for everybody, and that's kind of how we made it, while still making sure that it sort of was a rom-com in that general sense, because we don't get to be in rom-coms, or we
Mhm.
haven't. And I think that's changing, and I hope it changes fast. And I hope we get a lot of them. But it was exciting to be able to do that. But that's not always the case.
Yeah.
This film lent itself to be able to explore that and do it as authentically. And it was important, because of what the film was. But that's not always the case. It is a struggle sometimes.
Totally.
I do want to give you flowers though. Like you handled that balance so, so, so well. Like I love the moments of like, oh, anybody can see like their mom, their dad, their bad dates on this. Like anybody can resonate with this film, but it has so many of those like if you know moments. And I just felt like a hug. The whole movie felt like such a hug. Like I love a comfy rom-com movie and I can see people just like rewatch, have it playing when you're cooking, cleaning, like on a date or something. Like it's just such a cozy comfort movie.
Yay.
Did you make that with the intentions of having it be like something that people attach themselves to in like a cozy, comfy way?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things that we said a lot while right from like sort of the development of the script through the casting, and production, was that we wanted to make a film that felt joyful.
Mm.
And interestingly, I think when it came out, which was earlier this year, the number one thing that I heard from strangers who watched it and like connected with me, on the internet and wherever, was how joyful it was and how much they needed that. And that I think was really sort of eye-opening, but I totally get that. I think today people, while we have incredible things out there to watch that, are deep thinking projects, or, make you kind of really feel like, is reality, like your Black Mirrors or whatever, like The Last of Us or whatever the case might be, which is like very heavy stuff. I think sometimes we also just need some things that are light and fun and funny and, like you said, there's just like a hug and it's joyful, and I think there's a lot of stuff out there. And I think people want to see that as well, especially now. You just want something that feels um, like it's not that intense,
Yeah.
which was really, it was very I loved getting those comments from people, because it's not usually my go-to. The things that I make tend to have some edge to it.
Mm.
So I was like, wow, I should make more of this stuff. It made people really happy, So that was definitely eye-opening for me too.
I want to ask because obviously this is based on the original screenplay was called Five Blind Dates, right? And I'm internet friends with both Shu and Nathan, so
They're
it's
fabulous.
it's
Yeah.
it's kind of cool to see it transition not only to a new market but a new culture, like going from like an East Asian culture to South Asian culture. In the process of redeveloping this story, what were like some of the parallels that just like made sense jumping from that part of Asia to the other part of Asia for you?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I think, props to Shu and Nathan for coming up with this concept
Mhm.
that can be sort of like interchanged from culture to culture, because I think the backdrop of weddings are so universal, and I think all cultures have do really interesting things during weddings. And I think that's so clever. And then, of
Mhm.
course, going on the 5 dates and doing all these different things, where they've really created sort of this model that can be replicated. So it's like I met both of them after this movie came out, and I had lunch with them, and it was so fascinating to sort of chat and get to know them. Because the really interesting thing, and I had told them this as well, I had not seen or read the script
Oh, wow.
5 blind dates before making this, and it was a conscious choice because I
Yeah.
didn't want to be influenced by it in any way. And it was very interesting to watch it after the fact. It was like really fascinating to see, the areas where it's similar, but also areas where we kind of took our own sort of path.
Mhm.
Um, so during the development of it, we really sort of looked at it as sort of a standalone story, and really seeing how we could, you know, represent a South Asian family in a more like modern sense than we typically get to see ourselves represented in movies. Um, we really wanted to break away from like the stereotypes of like arranged marriage and overbearing conservative parents and all of those kinds of things. Well, all of that definitely exists. It's not the typical experience of most of us. Like my family is much more closer to Pia's family than it is to like a very like the way Indians have been portrayed on TV. And it's not that they came out of the box like that. Like, my mom evolved with time and she became
Mhm.
super cool and chill with things. And she wasn't always like that. And I think it's important to sort of like be able to embrace that. And it was really important for me and Sindhu, who plays the mom, to really have a mom that was like our moms, like Sindhu's mother is like she was this incredible woman who did incredible things at her time. My mother is an amazing woman, who is so like inspirational and funny and quirky and completely nuts, and I was like, I want the moms to be that mom, and it
Mhm.
was really important for us. All of the characters, was it's like they're traditional, but they're not in some ways, and they're full of like contradictions, and it's you never know what answer you're going to get from your mom or and your dad and all these things. So we really wanted to kind of embrace that, and it gave us a real opportunity to explore these characters more than like what was on the surface, and create. And honestly, it's a film where everybody is so like sort of like accepting of whatever's happening, which is
Mhm.
also really nice. There's not all this like heavy judgment and these kinds of things that we're so used to seeing. And of course, it exists, but I think it was also a way to like show that there are other ways of being, and
Mhm.
yes, we can be. You know, our parents, can be, judgmental or bigoted, but really they can also surprise us, with who they are, because they learn from us. They learn to be better,
Mhm.
that's what we do, we're always working on them, to be more open-minded and accepting and all these things, which are important. We wanted to showcase that there is that side and
Yeah.
it exists.
I've definitely noticed that within my own like relationship with my family is that over time my parents have grown softer to the things I suggest. It's not perfect by any means. Like on a trip we'll still butt heads a bunch, but sometimes I'll say like, "Hey mom, I'm gonna do this for a living," like whatever that might be, and
Mhm.
it's more of like a okay, I hope you sort it out versus like the hard walls that we used to get, like I used to get growing up. It's like I want to be
Yeah.
an actor. It's like why? What are you
Yeah.
actually gonna do? So it's
Yeah.
it's it is like a good like representation of that. But recently, I think it's on your Instagram page, but I saw a clip of you talking about stereotypes and kind of we're moving in the right direction in terms of what representation looks like and avoiding stereotypes. But it just made me curious. What are like stereotypes that you absolutely hate to see in media now, especially with your own culture?
Yeah, I mean, I'll tell you that it's not like, we have arrived and it's all a lot of it has to be, you have to constantly check yourself as well and make
Mm-hmm.
sure like, you know, in the hopes of making something feel relatable, like are you, continuing to push a stereotype that doesn't exist, and also breaking things and showing something in a light. It's like a fine dance, right? Like um making something feel different just for the sake of it, if it isn't rooted in reality or truth. That's also important, you know. I think for me, the big ones that like I think still are kind of a bit depressing are like the accents, because I think, you know, I feel like, you know, it's it's just it's such a weird one. You know, I think
Yeah.
it's a one that we can certainly like move forward from.
Yeah.
You know, I feel like it's so not real. The whole idea of like arranged marriage, or that, you know, there is this idea of like the Indians who are like the model minority myth, that we're all like
Mm.
some kind, you know, that we're all this perfect. Like I always say, you know, when I describe myself, I'm like, I'm the Indian that's not good at math and these things, you know, like that's
Yeah,
not
yeah.
me, you know. And there's a lot of us like that, right? That we're all not like engineers and doctors. Like there's some of us who do other things, you know,
Yeah.
and it's fine. Um, so I think in those ways, you know, is where I still see, if it's one Indian character in a project, it feels like all of these things, or one of these things, will always end up being the case. And like they'll be the smart, weird nerd,
Mm.
or, you know, whatever the case might be. Um, and I think when there's more than one, we have some hope. You know, if there's more than one Indian character, maybe, or South Asian character, maybe we can show some differentiation between them, you know. But if it's one, forget it. Like they're gonna have
Totally.
at least one of these things, you know. But I think we are getting better, and I think a lot of that it is also, you know, to it's a lot of educating, right?
Mm.
The audience, that there's, because you have encountered people from the diaspora that are different, you know.
Yeah.
You know that this is not the only way. You've met people in your life, you know, so come on, expect more, you know. But a lot of that has to do with, you know, looking at the material and seeing how you can work with the people to add more depth and layering to things, you know.
Yeah.
And
I,
that nerds are cool. Like we like
they
nerds,
are
you know?
cool.
And nerds are the best,
Yeah.
I
you
like
know.
the expect more. Like that I put that on a t-shirt.
Hot
Yeah,
damn. What an answer.
Yeah, great answer. Thank you for that.
yeah, for
I
sure.
think your film, it's so aware. Like you do that so good. Like
Mm.
you take these stereotypes and you're like, all right, how can we address this in a way that feels authentic and genuine and create a story about people? Real
Mm.
people, God forbid, like real people. And it is so juicy and delicious. And it's like I love what we're seeing, in these days of entertainment and AAPI spaces, that we're embracing the messiness of the human experience, right? And the way that Pia embraces this experience that she's currently in, that every person in the entire world can find one piece to relate to her and in her story too. I just have to tell you though, Sindhu's story, this motherhood, she is my favorite part of this film. Holy guacamole, dude! Like from the beginning, and how she's like, we it's find her taking her daughters to this bank and the whole bank situation, and then the end, her whole story arc. She is just such a delicious, delicious, delicious character. How did you balance doing like these motherhood kind of aspects to her, but also this
Mm.
like comedy element and kind of like breaking generational traumas and tropes and everything, and almost healing the audience in a way
Mm.
that gets audience members to hear things that they've never heard before from a mother figure.
Yeah, that's a great question. You know, it was there are certain characters in the script when I read it that made me really excited to want to make this film, because I was like, these are characters that we can really shape and tell a story, right? Because these are characters we haven't seen this way. So really, like, you know, it was right from like the development, and then in casting, like Sindhu was like our first choice for mom, right? Because she's so funny, and if you've seen her stand up, she is that person, you know. She's so unapologetically herself. And she's so funny, and she has such an interesting take on, like, you know, marriage and motherhood and friendship. Also relatable, but also so that is really from like who she is as an Indian person, but completely on its head, because that's so relatable. Like, you
Yeah.
know, you're not this traditional kind of person. And it's so, you know, it's really funny. I really knew that she would be able to bring that right sort of heart to the role. And of course, it was also, seeing my aunts and my mom, the kinds of moms that they are, they're so, they're, and one of the things that I would really say about, sort of seeing these women in my life is that they've all shown a propensity to be changed and to accept us as their children for who we are and therefore adjusting their expectations, and it was not something that they just did like easily. It was a struggle and we worked through it, but it was an amazing thing to watch them all do. And now they're also funny and cool and interesting, and in my eyes, they're like the late bloomers, like they're
Yeah.
all like partying and having fun now, and it's like cracks me up. I'm just like, what is even happening?
Yeah.
And I think it was to capture that, because it's like it's so special to be able to see your parents grow up in some ways, and grow, like open up their minds and experience life in a much more like open-minded way. And also, the taboo of remarrying or
Mhm.
allowing yourself to date or be desired, after a certain age. Like these things are like, it's such a small part, but it was so important that Pia's response was without a doubt supportive of her mom. There
Mhm.
was never a moment where she was like feeling any type of way about it. She was just like, that's what you need, mom. You need to be happy. And that was really important because that was not originally how it was written. And it was so important. We're like, no, that's not, we gotta embrace this moment. And it was, she eventually comes to that idea, but it wasn't an immediate acceptance and almost like a giddy excitement for your mom, right? Because when you are a single mom raising two girls, there's a closeness in that quality of relationship that is hard to explain. Like I've seen
Mhm.
that with my aunts who have daughters and stuff. Like their relationship is just so different, because they all grow up together. And and I think the other thing that was so important to Sindhu and me, and we said this from the beginning, is like when we see that scene in the closet, we want the audience to cheer for her mother. And if that doesn't happen, we have failed.
Yeah.
We want people to be like, heck yes, you know. And that was kind of our guiding principle for that character, was that it should be a celebration and the audience should feel excited for her. And I remember showing an early cut of it to my mother, and when that scene, she was like, I like this. This is cool.
I
Oh,
It just cracked me up. I was like, yeah, mom, that's what I'm talking about. She's a cool mom. I was like,
yeah.
yeah, she is a cool mom.
Isn't that funny that like as children we just like count that out of our parents, like they can't have lives outside of being our parents. But like
Yeah.
I've gotten to see my mom, like this is like a completely different example, but I've gotten to see her like really get passionate about K-pop, specifically BTS, and she's
Yes.
like forming new friendships and joining communities and like
Yes.
really reveling in it. And like one, it makes gift giving a lot easier, just get her something
Sure.
BTS. But seeing the pure joy and almost youthfulness, like she is living her best life, like
That's
talking
so
about
awesome.
these beautiful boys. And so I'm all for it, but it does remind me of that. It's just like, yeah, our parents have like full desires and wants and needs,
Yeah.
and maybe what's the like
Unrealized.
unrealized fantasies or dreams.
Yeah.
And so that was definitely one of my favorite kind of like misdirects of the film, especially because Sindhu's so funny. Like I will be pained that we're not getting more Pradeeps of Pittsburgh, because
I
like
know.
she's
She's so
just
good.
she's so good in any role. But
Yeah.
yeah, I just had to throw that out there. I was like, yes, plus
Love
one to
that for
what
your
you're saying.
mom.
Me
Yes.
too.
So great.
and it's that moment when Pia was like, "No, I think you guys would make a great couple." Like that acceptance of her and that like, "Yes,
Yeah.
and go have fun." Like that was so you do this great thing in this film where it's so comfortable to watch, but there are these like little bits of extremely important moments that are like nothing like they're like it doesn't feel like an important like it's not an explosion happening in the sky or like like a funeral or something like crazy, right? It's the date that she has with her friend and they just sit in their
Mhm.
apartment. Like that is a day that she's gonna remember forever. Like her saying yes to her mother and like saying, "You guys would look great together." Like that is such an important moment she'll remember
Yeah.
forever. You you did that so I just have to give you your flowers for that. Like it's such a
Thank
great
you.
balance
Yeah,
of
thank you. I really appreciate that. And I think, in a film that is kind of like a fun ride, the quiet moments are important. And I think, just to sort of go back to the Sindhu scene, it was a conscious choice to not make a big deal out of that moment. Um, but in that moment when she says, "You really think so?" Like she's almost caught off guard because she is waiting for her daughter to like unload on her.
Yeah.
She's like, "Okay, here it comes." And then her daughter is like, "I think he's good for you." And she's just like, "What? Really?" And then she's like, and then she goes into like, "Yeah, he is good for me," because she's just like, I know what is happening in my life. Like, this is nuts. Like, because I think she goes back to being like a little girl. Like, she
Mhm.
feels that moment, where she feels what she's probably not felt or felt ever, whatever the
Yeah.
case might be. And even with the scene with her friend Luke, I mean, with Jay, Luke's the actor's name. I remember, he and I talking a lot about the scene, and again, that scene was also a little bit different, and it was important, and it came from him, the actor, where he was like, you know, what if the character Jay's backstory is not like trauma, where he was rejected by his mother? It's like, why must it be that way? So then we
Mm.
rewrote it, Um, and I totally get that. It's like, and it ends up being the stereotype of the gay best friend having to come from trauma and overcoming that, and now is able to be a good friend. But why can't he just come from a loving home where his mom figured it out and was like, did the work to be okay with it? And I
Yeah.
was like, 100%.
Yeah.
Why should we not do that? That should be the story we tell, because it's okay to also tell that story,
Yeah. Kind of coming from the stereotype angle too. It's just like, what's a new
Yeah,
way into the same kind of result? And like that's a
yeah,
much more natural like step into their relationship, which is great.
yeah.
You mentioned kind of the fun and games of building it out. It just made me curious because the dates go so poorly. But well, I was wondering if there was ever other dates in mind that like that you wish you could have included, or you had different like instead of like an allergic reaction, it was something else. Like was there any kind of play, and then what made you settle on what we get, if there was any kind of conversation?
The dates specifically follow pretty closely to the original.
Okay.
There were some changes that we made, like the date with Phil Dunster.
Mm,
In the original, it's not firewalking, it's something else.
mm,
And it's something that we actually rewrote that came out of a location issue. Because all the pools we could find with diving boards and things like that were just like not frightening enough. And I was like, no, this is not going to work. So
yeah.
we essentially just rewrote it with that in mind. But interestingly enough, it was the Akshay date where he gets the allergic reaction. When I originally read the script, it was that scene and then what transpires at the end of that date that made me want to do this movie, because I was just like, I was just reading it and I wasn't really sure, and it wasn't called Five Blind Dates or anything. Like, it didn't have anything to do with dates in the title. When I was reading it was just called Untitled Nikita Lalwani Project, so I had no idea what I was getting into. And then, so I was not expecting like dates to go wrong or whatever. And I remember I originally thought that he was going to be her love interest. And then I was just like, what is going on in this? Completely bananas. And I remember after that, I texted my agent and I was like, I really want to do this movie. It's so crazy. And which is why also with casting of Nikesh was so important, because Nikesh is such a wonderful actor. And it was going back to that idea that, that it's trying to play against the idea that, oh, he's a nerd or whatever, and therefore he's not attractive. Pia genuinely actually likes him, and she's actually, and then he ends up with the mother. And it was again a way to play on that stereotype, which is, you know, the Indian guy that she kind of is interested in is in the nerd and therefore whatever, blah, blah. That was not, the idea is that he's actually like there's a moment where she genuinely is into it, and
Yeah.
she's happy that it's him that shows up. So those things were kind of, how we tried to work around, I guess, the stereotypes in like a subtle way, you
Mm,
know?
yeah.
Yeah.
It's so good. I think you secretly made a movie about cool moms though. Like
Yes.
I love it.
Full
I love
box
it.
all the way.
And then every stereotype this is just so it's full of joy. Like even this everything about this, the whole movie, everything about the movie and surrounding the movie is so full of joy. You nailed the head on that one. And speaking about joy though, I gotta know, planning the whole everything is so elaborate with this wedding, right? Like she really did make a whole like binder out of this, and I identify with that strongly. But did you feel like you were creating a wedding of your own during this whole process, or how was putting the wedding together for you?
You know what was really, it was like all of the Indian weddings that I have gone to. I was like, it's all paying off now because it was just in my blood. Like the Indian wedding like thing just like flowed out of me. It was like I was like, yes, I know this stuff. I've been through this. I have been to many weddings. I have had my own wedding, my cousin's weddings, dance practice. I'm always in charge of like ensuring everybody does the dance practice. So yeah,
You
that's
are a
you.
director after all. It makes sense to put you
Exactly.
in charge.
Yes. And I will threaten them with like everything. And then I will have to convert the steps, especially for all our non-Indian people who show up
Oh,
like into words so that I will like wipe the table, slap the child, open the window, punch the auntie. It's the only way they'll remember it.
yeah. That's
And somehow they'll remember it then. But if you actually teach them the steps and they'll just be like, what? And then it's like, oh, but yeah, they'll be all over the place. Um, so yeah, those are disturbing names though, but.
well, to be fair, that's very reminiscent. I've worked with stunt coordinators before, and that's like how they talk to non-fighting actors. It's like pick up the phone and then give it to them. Like it's very much in the vein of that. But
Yeah.
just because you got on the topic, I love a good Bollywood dance sequence. I love that this movie ends with one.
Yes.
Shout out to any choreographer. Did you have a specific choreographer come in? Like
Yes.
who? Like, can you tell me about that process?
Sure. So our choreographer is great. Her name is Nilika Bose.
I love Nilik. I was hoping
You
it
know
was her.
Nilika?
Yeah, she did Eternals as well.
That's awesome. Yeah,
Yeah.
Nilika's great. So Nilika was our choreographer. So essentially, and she also, so the actor who plays the sister
Hmm.
also goes to her dance school. So, it was a kind of a good connection. And Nilika came in, I talked to her about kind of like what the vision was, what we wanted to do. The last dance sequence ended up being the end credits, but it wasn't originally that. It was actually a little earlier in the timeline, but it ended up kind of feeling like an end of movie dance credit moment. So we kind of put it there. But Nilika was great. I mean, she had her dance troupe is in a lot of the dances. So
Mm.
the dancers who are in her school are in a lot of our dances. And yeah, she was really good. She was solid. She came in, she got them all rehearsed. And then the craziest part, as you would imagine in most movies, they were so excited, but we had so little time. Like I think the last dance, which is Freed from Desire, was shot in 3 takes and probably 45 minutes.
Whoa.
And then
Whoa.
uh, the other dance, which is all the ladies, that was probably 2 to 3 takes as well. Yeah, that's kind of how we had to do it.
My
But it was good. They
stress
were
level.
yeah, they were very stressed. All of the dancers, I mean, all of the actors and dancers, they were so excited about this part because they'd been rehearsing and doing all of that. They had no idea how chaotic it was, and that like if I didn't get it done, like it was not happening. So I was just like sweating. And it was the day that we had Amazon's marketing was on set because they were capturing a lot of the stuff because they knew it was like an exciting day. We got to put all of this stuff in the promos, and I'm just like, guys, how are we gonna make this day? And the dancers were all like, when is our time?
Oh,
But they came and they nailed it, and they were so cute and they were so happy, and they'd keep wanting to watch playback, and then they would be like so excited. All I'd hear is just
oh.
like laughing and giggling by the monitor, and I'm like, guys, we gotta go again. Let's go.
I'm glad
Um,
you're having fun. We got another setup to
we gotta
do.
go. We got a whole other dance to shoot. But they were so cute, and so professional, and Nalika was wonderful. And they had a lot of fun doing it. And I was grateful that they practiced the hell out of it. And
Yeah.
all of the individual dance things that the couples do at the end, like they kind of worked it out with Nalika. I generally gave her like kind of like what the feel of it should be for each
Mhm.
person. And then yeah, it was part of it was like, let's surprise me. So then they did their thing, and it was pretty cute. They did a great
Oh,
job.
I love it. I love that.
Everything feels so fun. Like if I can't imagine how fun the whole shooting process was. Can I know what is a moment for you? Like in talking about the joy of things, what was the most joyous moment of shooting this film?
Let's see, what was the most joyous moment? There was a lot of like, I think I would say the days, we had a couple of days where they were just like really funny days where we were just laughing super hard. It was a really fun film, and I think especially because it's comedies, they tend to be fun, but it was also a very hard movie to make,
Mm.
um, because it's a big ensemble cast, lots of moving parts, big set pieces, lots of things. So it was a challenging film to make. It wasn't like, we were just like laughing through it and everything it was like intense, but it was fun. It was a fun, intense. I think the yoga scene, which so much of it didn't make the cut, is actually a very, very funny scene. There is an entire character whose full glory didn't make the full cut, the last cut, the eventual cut, because our film was too long. It was
Mm.
almost 2.5 hours long. But the actor Sophia, who plays Lily in the film, whose part has really been sort of truncated now, is insanely funny in the movie. Like she is bananas, and her arc really got trimmed down. But in the yoga scene, you really see her in her full glory. Like she is just hilarious, and she does all these yoga moves. But we had to trim all of that down, and there's a lot of banter that goes back and forth between Simone and Phil that we had to trim down just to get through like the scenes.
Mm.
So that was shot over, I think, 3 days, and it was really funny because the whole cast was there, and it was just funny, and they were all just getting along so well, and it was hilarious. Everybody was just so funny. And then the other time that was also both very funny but also completely bananas was when we did Asim Chowdhury scene, which is he's the first date, Sid, who she goes to see. And so we got Asim on the film by all of us making him like funny videos where we basically like begged him to come to be in the movie. Like Simone composed a song that was really cute. And everybody, like, we made these crazy videos to send to him, and he was just like, "You guys are so weird. I'll do this movie." Um, because it was a small part, but it was kind of a crazy one, and we wanted to make sure. And he came in and he was like, "I really want to do this, but I want to rewrite the scene a little bit." And it wasn't a little; we rewrote it a lot. Like he came in with the idea that the character's always written as this billionaire rich guy, but he was like, "I want to be this billionaire rich guy who's afraid of physical contact, of like physical touch and humans." So we took that idea from him, and we basically were writing it as we were filming it. And that was crazy, like that whole process of like, and he was so funny, and he improved a ton, and we were just like, everybody was just trying to keep it together between takes because he was just so funny. And it was really fun to work in that way because I had no idea where we were going to end up, right?
Mhm.
And it was very scary. But you had to trust the process, and you had to trust that, the actors and I knew kind of like where the scene had to end. We just had to find our way through it. Um, so we did. And but yeah, it was kind of out there, while we were figuring it out. It was pretty cool.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was mad.
Well, we definitely enjoyed it. I was telling Ash, it like feels like something that can like transcend to different cultures. Like a picture
Yeah,
this of, like African mythology, or not mythology, sorry, like African culture or versus Latino culture. Like it's just like a fun base to see where you can find cultural parallels, and obviously dating culture is very, very different depending on where you come from. So this was like a night, like I can see this going further, if that makes sense.
totally. Yeah. And
uh
I hope it does. I hope Amazon and Nathan and Shu get together and do another one in a different place with a
yeah,
different group. I think it'd be awesome.
for sure. But we're nearing the end of our podcast, and whenever we have a guest, we always like to pass the mic over to you. So whether it's advice that you have that you want to give to any young creatives, or something that you're promoting right now or working on and excited to like tease to us, we just want to give you the floor to share whatever you feel like sharing right now in this moment.
What advice do I have? I mean, I think my advice to young creatives is always, um, it's kind of like something that Mark Duplass said, which is the cavalry is not coming. You are the cavalry. It's you. You're a one human band. You're your best super fan. Get out there and keep making things, whatever it is, you have to do it. And I'm an example of that, um, which is basically get the people who love you the most and get them to help you make your first thing, whatever it is,
Mhm.
and go from there. I think it's character building, but it also really teaches you resilience because this industry's tough. It's not easy. It requires a lot of fortitude and ability to push forward. But if you make something from the beginning to end and put it out in the world, people take you some more seriously. They just want to see that you will be insane enough to do something like that. And then they like believe in you. They're like, okay, this person is completely crazy. We can get behind them. Like this is what they want to do. And I think today there's so many avenues to get things made, and get things out, even if it's not, things are. I think people can do stuff in a way that doesn't. You don't have to allow the gatekeeping to stop you. You
Mhm.
know, you can put it out on YouTube. Generate buzz. You can do so many things. So keep making stuff. The world needs you, so do it.
Yes. What is it? Expect more. The world needs you. We got a couple t-shirts out of this episode.
I'm
I'm a
just here
cool
saying,
mom. That's a good
thanks
one.
for t-shirts.
Yeah. Well, amazing. Thank you so much for joining us, Prarthana. It was a pleasure to talk to you. I hope to see more come. You said you have like some edge to your to stuff, so now I'm like going to be looking down the
Check it out.
pipeline.
It's definitely more edge than
Then
this one.
picture this. Okay, I can't wait to
But
like
I'm all
see.
for joy now. Joy seems really fun.
Joy is a good one. I think we need a lot
We could
more
use
of
more joy.
joy and hope. Would be nice to see more
Sure,
projects coming out. So
sure.
maybe with a little edge, though.
Yeah,
You could combine
Just a little
yeah.
bit.
Just
Just a
a
little
little bit.
bit.
We need edge.
But
Um,
thank you so much for making my new favorite comfort movie.
them.
oh, thank you guys. Thank you. It was so nice talking to you both. Thank you.
The Tremendous Talk podcast is produced by Lawrence Sharma, Ashley Rapuano Sanchez, Gabriela David, Joseph Corralde, and Jeremiah Abraham in collaboration with Tremendous. The Tremendous Talk podcast jingle is by Jared Sanchez and Ashley Rapuano Sanchez, produced at Amsterdam Records.